The mainstream media's credibility is at an all-time low.
Mainstream media itself is worried that they're losing their total grip on power.
For decades, they've been wrong on just about every major story.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none.
President Trump could be a Russian asset.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. This version of Biden is the best Biden ever.
The legacy media's credibility has plummeted, but why? Who brought it down? To find the answer, we tell the story of the rise of Andrew Breitbart and how he paved the way for alternative media. This is Red Pilled America.
I grew up on the west side of Los Angeles, and my week in high school constituted going to about 3 or 4 movies a week, going out with my friends, watching television, going to a prep school, then going on to Tulane University. At no point during that period of time did I hear conservative thought. At no point did I have any opportunity to become anything other than liberal. So I considered myself a default liberal.
From 1987 to 1991, Andrew attended Tulane University, a private college in New Orleans, Louisiana, known for its progressive politics. He majored in American Studies. You'd think an alum of this prestigious institution would have a line of job offers waiting upon graduation. But when he returned home to West Los Angeles, his degree didn't translate to career prospects.
And it was demoralizing. And I graduated less skilled, less motivated, and I was a waiter.
Just as he was questioning his model of the world, a story consumed American media. Clarence Thomas was nominated to fill a Supreme Court vacancy, but in the middle of Thomas's confirmation hearing, scandalous accusations surfaced.
Nothing like what happened today has ever happened before. An articulate, emotional nominee to the U.S. Supreme Court went before 14 U.S. senators and the world to deny he sexually harassed a former woman assistant. His articulate, emotional accuser followed with specific details of what she claims he did.
Watching the hearings, wanting to root for the takedown of Clarence Thomas, I watched the television set, and the television set told me that this was a bad man.
Clarence Thomas called Anita Hill a liar. Hill said Thomas sexually harassed her, and she passed a lie detector test.
And so I watched these hearings like a spectator who wanted to see somebody mauled. I watched day 1, I watched day 2, I watched the entire thing. I went from wanting him to be taken down to wondering, where's the beef?
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. And from my standpoint, as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves.
Everything that I knew, everything that I picked up at college in my American Studies, cultural Marxist, oppressor oppressed, black people are always right, white people are always wrong. I didn't understand how Ted Kennedy, the Ted Kennedy of Chappaquiddick fame, how Howard Metzenbaum, Joe Biden, and a series of white privileged men could sit in judgment of this man who was the son of grandparents who were sharecroppers, who raised him, and he went to Yale Law School. He did everything right. I did not understand how it could be that these white people of privilege were attacking this black man who was in this historic position while the mainstream media took him down.
Watching this spectacle red-pilled Andrew. He wasn't yet a conservative, but he knew something was wrong. In the months that followed, Andrew picked up a job at a Hollywood production company as a runner, delivering scripts around town. And it was during these long drives that he was introduced to the pioneer of conservative talk radio.
What makes this country great, folks, is you, individuals going out and living your life independently. You striving and pursuing excellence.
And I started to ask people around me, have you ever listened to this Rush Limbaugh creature? And they said, yes, he's a racist, sexist, and a homophobe. I said, okay, I need some help here because I've been listening now for months as I'm driving on LA freeways delivering scripts. He's not. He's not.
Driving around listening to Rush Limbaugh, Andrew was learning more about American studies than during his entire time at the prestigious Tulane. He began seeing the world differently.
Rush Limbaugh analyzing the source material of the world, the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, ABC, CBS, and NBC, he was able to create for me a very vivid picture that the people who were allegedly objective and neutral reporters and journalists were the front line of the political battle. And so then the Matrix, or the Democrat media complex, became everything to me.
Andrew Breitbart was on the way to becoming a conservative, but at the time, Andrew was working in Hollywood. By the early 1990s, Tinseltown was dominated by liberals. He quickly realized that his career prospects would be limited by his politics, so he began searching for other options.
I meet Matt Drudge almost right away, and I met him, and he was folding t-shirts at CBS at the time. I met him for about 4 hours, heard his worldview, heard what he felt about the media, heard what he felt about, in 1995, this nascent internet. And he left the place, drove off in like an old beat-up Hyundai. He was the manager at the CBS gift shop, and I said to my wife, that is a media visionary. He's going to change the world.
And in 1995, Andrew began working for Matt Drudge on his The Drudge Report website, eventually manning it when Drudge was offline. It was there that Andrew learned how the media ignored massive stories that hurt liberal politics.
Word of the president's alleged affair first leaked out this week by way of the internet through an increasingly familiar route, an internet column written by Matt Drudge. The Drudge Report is a media gossip page known for below-the-beltway reporting.
The Drudge Report broke the story of President Bill Clinton's affair with intern Monica Lewinsky, a story the legacy media ignored.
It really is the first time I think the internet is breaking a story of this magnitude.
I mean, this intern relationship didn't happen last week. It happened over a course of a year and a half.
You've got everyone in Washington now aware of a story after I broke it over the internet over the weekend, after Newsweek stopped the story, when they decided not to run this story, and they're going to have to live with that mistake in the history books.
Drudge broke one of the biggest stories of the 1990s, and Andrew Breitbart had a front row seat.
Matt Drudge comes along in 1995, and he tells people, hey, look, you don't need to have an AM radio station, which costs a lot of money. If you have a modem and a computer, you can enter this thing.
It was with Drudge that Andrew learned how to run a profitable online news outlet. He worked with the internet media pioneer for over a decade, seeing how a small team could break enormously consequential stories that the mainstream media ignored. It was a crash course in journalism. But in 2004, he started venturing back to his Hollywood roots. He co-authored Hollywood Interrupted with Mark Ebner. The book was a scathing critique of celebrity culture and Hollywood excess. It became a New York Times bestseller and signaled Andrew's emergence as a pop culture commentator. A year later, he quietly launched Breitbart.com with his childhood friend Larry Solov. It wasn't long after that Andrew would meet his future editor-in-chief.
In 2007, Alex Marlowe attended a conference in Santa Barbara. The speaker was Andrew Breitbart.
No offense, you are the definition of the indoctrination, and you don't even understand what you're saying.
At the time, Alex was still an undergrad student at UC Berkeley, but he'd already spent nearly a decade steeped in conservative politics. So right-wing ideas were nothing new to him, but Andrew was talking about something no one in conservative media had been discussing. He was introducing the idea that politics is driven by culture.
So Andrew gave this speech, and it was about how culture is upstream from politics.
We have so many people in the conservative movement who write about legislation and political controversies every single day, but very few people focus on pop culture. And pop culture is the DNA of who we are.
It never dawned on me that, of course, that the politicians are taking cues from the cultural actors, not the other way around.
Alex had heard of Andrew before. When he clicked on links at the Drudge Report, some led back to Breitbart.com.
Gave this speech, and it was a wild, unwieldy speech, and he was drinking red wine, and he was gesticulating wildly.
As long as we haven't taken back the colleges and the humanities departments, give your children an extra $100 per month for beer, because alcohol will 100% save them from indoctrination in the cultural Marxist curriculum.
I was sitting there slack-jawed going, this is the vision. And I did something that is tough for me because I'm pretty much an introvert. Right after the speech, in the hotel lobby bar, where Andrew has been known to congregate and talk to anyone because he's a genuine populist, I went up to him, simply said, loved your speech. And by the end of the weekend, he'd offer me a job.
Alex Marlowe became Breitbart News' employee number 1. He started full-time in June 2008, within days of graduating from Berkeley. Up until 2009, Breitbart.com had primarily been a news aggregator, where Alex and Andrew picked stories from the newswires, services like the Associated Press, UPI, and Reuters that provided general interest stories to media organizations, and they would curate these stories for the site. But Andrew wanted to make a move into producing his own content, and he wanted to start by covering the thing that drove American culture: Hollywood.
This was Andrew's interest, and he genuinely believed it was even more important than the political side of things. And so that's where Andrew began.
So he set out to launch a new site. He called it Big Hollywood. He later spoke about why he started the site.
The number one reason is that the conservative movement has completely detached itself from the concept of popular culture. And so the conservative movement needs to go focus on Hollywood in countless ways. It needs to encourage its young to go out to Hollywood, to become screenwriters, actors, producers, below-the-line workers. It also needs to focus on Hollywood proper, film reviews, and become engaged in the debate out there.
Andrew needed an editor-in-chief for Big Hollywood, so he turned to a guy named John Nolte.
And literally, people probably don't believe this, but I had an interview set up to be a bag boy at Ralph's, the grocery store chain in California. And all of a sudden, I got an email from Andrew Breitbart.
Andrew asked Nolte to come in for a formal interview at Andrew's house.
So I headed out there, and he told me his ideas for Big Hollywood, which I loved. He offered me the job, and I grabbed it more out of desperation than anything.
In those first few weeks, some of today's biggest conservative personalities were Big Hollywood contributors: Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, Greg Gutfeld, and Andrew Klavan, just to name a few.
And then we broke some big stories. It was like your story about the National Endowment for the Arts and the Obama administration, how they were going to try and manipulate that and pervert that to create state-funded propaganda for Obama.
Our first big scoop was your scoop.
What Alex and John are referring to was when Adriana and I caught the Obama administration trying to use the National Endowment for the Arts to create propaganda, all to sell the American people on Obamacare. As players in the arts world, in August 2009, we were invited to a White House conference call to discuss how the arts could make positive change. But when we dialed into the number, we became witness to something different. The call was organized by several figures, including the National Endowment for the Arts' then communication director, Yossi Sergent. Effectively, what we were being asked to do was create art that supported Obama's agenda, because at the time, congressional town halls were going nuclear over the Obama administration's attempt at passing a health care insurance mandate.
Members of Congress are back home holding town hall meetings on the issue, and in meeting after meeting, there's been a pattern of disruption. Opponents of change shouting at members of Congress so loud at times police are called in.
Snapshots from the healthcare debate in Michigan.
I want to know if it's coming out of my paycheck.
Town halls were going nuclear, so the Obama administration turned to one of their arts agencies to change the narrative. The National Endowment for the Arts provides hundreds of millions of dollars of public grants to artists. By having an NEA representative on the call directing artists to make political art, some experts claimed the Obama administration was violating the Hatch Act, a law prohibiting federal funds from being used for political activities.
After listening to the call, we decided to publish a story about it on the website of our new friend Andrew Breitbart. At first, only conservative media picked up the story.
The National Endowment for the Arts recently conducted a conference call for dozens of artists and filmmakers. But our next guest says the agenda on that call seemed a lot more political than artistic. And joining us now is the filmmaker and art consultant, Patrick Kurilsch. Patrick, thanks for joining us.
Driven by Andrew, the story began to slowly spread throughout conservative outlets. However, the mainstream media was ignoring it. But what Adriana and I intentionally kept quiet was that we'd recorded the conference call. The plan was that if someone involved in the meeting lied, we'd have receipts to prove them wrong.
The plan worked. When the NEA and even the White House publicly contradicted our account, we slowly began to release documents backing up our claims. When the mainstream media continued to ignore the story, we dripped out audio clips of the call.
I'm going to show you the beginning of something that should scare the living daylights out of you. It is propaganda in America. The National Endowment of the Arts is now holding conference calls. Let me give you a taste of what was said in this conversation.
We are just now learning how to really bring this community together to speak with the government, what that looks like legally. Bear with us as we learn the language so that we can speak to each other safely.
And joining me now to talk about the serious misuse of power by the administration is artist Patrick Corielch, who recorded that conference call, and the publisher of BigGovernment.com, Andrew Breitbart, is back with us.
What this is all about is the Obama administration using the NEA, a bunch of union people, in their community organizing efforts to help propagandize the Obama agenda, all of it.
It was a drip, drip, drip tactic. The White House didn't know what we had on them. It was an effective approach that Andrew was about to employ for another Breitbart news story.
So simultaneously, while your NEA story is breaking, James O'Keefe goes to Andrew with his ACORN tape.
For those who may not know, ACORN was a community organizing group founded in 1970 that purported to advocate for low-income families. At its peak, it had roughly 500,000 members in 1,200 neighborhood chapters all across the country. The group worked with the federal government for the census, and it also had ties to a particular political campaign, a relationship that came up during the 2008 presidential debates.
We need to know the full extent of Senator Obama's relationship with ACORN, who is now on the verge of maybe perpetrating one of the greatest frauds in voter history in this country, maybe destroying the fabric of democracy.
The only involvement I've had with ACORN was I represented them alongside the U.S. Justice Department in making Illinois implement a motor voter law that helped people get registered at DMVs.
ACORN played a key role in causing the financial crisis by pressuring local banks to lend to poor and financially unstable people.
ACORN is a group of community organizers, and they specialize in putting pressure, really kind of intimidation tactics on banks to get these banks to make high-risk loans to low-credit customers. Barack Obama trained the leadership of organizers in ACORN in Chicago.
Oh, man. So in effect, you're saying ACORN is one of the foundation or the cornerstones of the crisis that we're in right now.
The proof was in the pudding. This was one bad organization, but the general public had little awareness of ACORN. However, two citizen journalists were about to change all of that.
But the story is that James O'Keefe and Hannah Giles, who impersonated a pimp and prostitute, and using a hidden camera that would come through a buttonhole on James O'Keefe's shirt, they would go into these offices of the Association for Community Organizing and Reform Now, ACORN, offices, and they would say that they want to start a child sex trafficking business and launder the money from that business into a fictitious political campaign for James. And Hannah was going to run the girls. So that was the premise. And all but one ACORN office bit.
Andrew broke the ACORN undercover sting, and just like with the NEA story, the only outlets that would pick it up initially were conservative media.
Tonight, I am joined by the independent activist filmmaker who went undercover into those ACORN offices, James O'Keefe.
Joining me now is the person who posed as a prostitute, Hannah.
Hi, Glenn.
Why did you do this?
To expose ACORN. I saw them as a thug organization that was getting my tax dollars.
As the ACORN story reached a crescendo, we released the entire audio and transcripts of the NEA conference call. The White House had heard enough. An Obama appointee quickly resigned, and the White House was forced to issue new conduct guidelines, promising that they'd never let it happen again. It wasn't until then that the New York Times and the Washington Post covered the story, and the rest of the mainstream media followed.
The National Endowment for the Arts, it's the largest federal funder of the arts, it's embroiled in a controversy. And it all goes back to a conference call held in August.
Independent film producer Patrick Corielch, who believes many artists have become tools of the state, recorded the call. He says the mandate was clear.
They encouraged us to create art on healthcare,
on energy and in the environment.
In light of the controversy, the White House issued an advisory to federal agencies to take care to avoid even the appearance that politics played a part in the award of federal grants.
10 Republican senators sent a letter to the chairman of the NEA, concerned taxpayer dollars were being used to promote the president's legislative priorities. But the White House is clearly concerned about this.
The NEA story took down an Obama appointee, but the ACORN sting brought down an entire government-funded organization. It was a blockbuster.
Rarely does a piece of investigative reporting get such a big and quick response, and rarely is the undercover reporter such a fascinating character.
You don't help a woman who wants to traffic in underage girls for sex business to fund her boyfriend's future congressional campaign.
You know, what I know is that what I saw on that video was certainly inappropriate.
To ACORN, obviously, the conduct that you see on those tapes is completely unacceptable.
In the aftermath of these stories, with egg on their face, the legacy media began doing what has become so common today. They tried to marginalize and deplatform their opposition. At every turn, they tried branding Andrew Breitbart and his fledgling news organization as intentionally inaccurate, even racist. And for the better part of the next year and a half, it was a full court press.
He's also been described as a conservative propagandist and a Tea Party loyalist.
You have no concern for the facts. You are so quick to make allegations about other people.
They pretend they're sort of creating the people's journalism. They don't even know what it is. They have no respect for it.
You're not a journalist or a commentator. You're a con man.
Tell you what you just did. You used a cold language. The black studies people, right? In other words,
then I'm racist.
You yourself have been up to skullduggery before. You know, you stitched up Shirley Sherrod pretty spectacularly.
Do you think he's racist?
I think he's so vicious. Yes, I do.
The establishment media, overwhelmingly left-leaning, were trying to crush Andrew and his renegade journalists. This was the environment that Breitbart News was enduring after their national scoops. But what the legacy media didn't know at the time was that Andrew Breitbart was about to break a story that would end their control of the narrative.